June B. Texas Slim. What's going on, good man? And so whenever I come back to the States, it's a guns a-blazing, and we haven't even started yet. And I think you know what I mean. I brought it up earlier, in Kerrville, Texas, we kicked off the first ever Beef Initiative conference. What was cool about that is it went into the unknown. What it required was proof of work. We didn't know. There was no roadmap, and that's what people get stuck on. They don't know. They don't know how to take that step forward with a mindset of sovereignty, that they don't have to ask for permission. So reflecting back on Kerrville all the way to where we are now in Australia, I could be in Texas or I could be in Australia. The proof of work is the same. The soil is the same. The cows are the same. The farmers and ranchers are the same. That's what's so beautiful about this, and that's what has been captured. That is what has been stolen from everybody's mindset, is the proof of work to basically sovereignty and truth in food and true food intelligence and beef intelligence. There are no borders. The Bitcoin mindset from the beginning lets you see this. It lets you have that vision. That's why I called my podcast in the very, very beginning, Texas Slim's Vision. I had a vision. I saw there are no borders. I saw that the proof of work is the same. I saw that this has been stolen from our mindsets, and it's been stolen from the ranchers and farmers themselves. And so what we do is we bridge. We bridge with proof of work that is the same across this world, and we communicate with sound communications. That's why I have to hit the road all the time. I will never quit traveling the world. I was talking to my son the other day. It's like, I don't think we're going to have a ranch, but what we're going to have is 1,000 ranchers that invite us through the gate. And that's my mission, is to basically take this networking, take this proof of work, take this sound communication, take this sound money, take this sound food, and show the world that there are no more borders. And you do not have to validate those deceptions anymore. It's a form of clarity that whenever you get it, and you ask, what have I seen in Australia? Same thing. When we onboard a rancher, you see this sense of clarity in their mind. Their face lightens up. Whenever you see people come to these farm tours in Australia, and they don't know about regenerative farming and ranching, they don't understand basically food intelligence to the level that we're basically educating, their lives change. Their lights come on. And so what we have here is a global movement. This is a mission that I can't stop. I will never stop. And it's not a numbers game. It's a quality game. And it's based on the proof of work. It's based on those nodes. It's based on meeting people that you never thought you would be able to meet. I'm going to meet somebody in Bangkok, Thailand at a Bitcoin meetup. There's no way in hell I would meet this person doing me in a centralized food intelligence way. It would just never happen.
Just by show of hands, how many people have actually ordered beef from Cole and paid via Bitcoin? Wow. So I think we heard Parker's side of the story about how he and Cole and Slim met, but I think just as a starting point, Cole, just getting a little bit more background on how you got into Bitcoin, what was it about Bitcoin that spoke to you and made you realize that there was an opportunity for you to branch out and start thinking about things a little bit differently?
Well, I think in all fairness, Parker hit it on point. It was that exact event. No one in the room shoot me, but I've been a banker for my career my entire life. So I'm still in the industry, and you can only imagine what I'm getting to hear all week long for the last 2 weeks. But it was nice seeing a different perspective and hearing about something that, traditionally in my industry, Bitcoin's not looked upon very highly. The U.S. monetary system, even though we print money endlessly, is a very sound way of doing business, right? And as a cattleman, I have been taken advantage of, along with every other producer, from these corporate conglomerates who, in essence, not only control the supply of beef that comes from us, but they control the pricing, they control the end commodity that hits your table. And someone had, at some point, we were going to have to stand up because we've had no leverage. Most ranchers have been too scared to put their foot down and say, hey, look, we're not going to sell to, you pick a company, 1,000 head this week. Well, what kind of ripple effect does that have? Well, if they would do it and we would all stop for 1 week, we could actually break the monopoly in a lot of ways. But our industry is so tight on cash flow that most farmers and ranchers can't afford to take that stance. Bitcoin was the perfect opportunity because now I can not only decentralize my money, I could decentralize food, and it just really created this perfect sync. We're all about individuality. We're about being able to go peer-to-peer. We're about being able to integrate, facilitate, and ranchers have a long history of incorporating technology, even though we like to play really dumb. We're not. Every piece of equipment that we operate on is driven through technology. So being able to do peer-to-peer, sell beef to you on my cell phone, have instantaneous results, that was a no-brainer. That event that we actually, Beef Initiative, partnered with Meat Mafia, and we had at Cooper's, opened my eyes to Bitcoin. A few weeks earlier, JP and Michael with the Oshi, actually Michael and Parker came out to the ranch and introduced me to Bitcoin, and I was a little leery. I took my first transaction, and I was like, man, that's a lot of authentication, and it's so crazy how far that's come just in the 14, 16 months I've been accepting Bitcoin as a source of payment, and it's crazy how much of my customer base is driven now because of Bitcoin.
Were you surprised by the enthusiasm of the Bitcoiners at that event? Because I remember setting it up, and it seemed like there was only going to be a handful of people there. And then Parker showed up, Jimmy showed up, and it seemed like there was really sort of this top-down effort to be intentional about being at this event and starting to connect with different networks of people, whether that's ranchers or other food providers. So have you been surprised by the support you've gotten?
I don't think I can put that into words. The last speakers, y'all made a comment a while ago about how 9 years ago, looking at Bitcoin, you might be looked at as a troll or someone that's kind of out there that isn't realistic. Well, when I enter a room of 50 people passionate about something, psychologically I want to say, man, the movement is on. But at the same time, I can't help but kind of second guess, all right, is this just a small niche group? Is this really realistic? The numbers told me that story. And in 9 months, we did over $500,000 in sales just with Bitcoin peer-to-peer transactions, which completely changed my perspective.
And with that, have you seen your own interest in Bitcoin evolve in terms of how you can integrate it going forward into your business?
Yeah, so very similar. We're doing full integration in our operation. So not only do we raise the calf from start all the way to when they're finished and they go to harvest. Now we harvest, now we sell. We also do all our distribution. So what we're trying to do is, with our processing facility, we also open a meat market. So we will be fully integrated where you can buy or pay for product with Bitcoin at all times. And then with me, Parker gave me a ton of education. Pretty much anyone and everyone in this room, I've been a sponge because I've wanted to learn and understand Bitcoin so much. I understand the cattle industry. I understand agriculture. I understand a little bit about banking sometimes. And I say that jokingly because who knows what the Fed thinks. But I've continued to learn and evolve to a level to where now I can now share and onboard someone. We've had the opportunity. I was very leery. Our processing plant is in Luling, Texas. We're 40 miles east of Austin. It's a very rural area. And one of the first actually inside customers we had was like, do you pay in Bitcoin? And it threw me off because I was expecting the locals to come in. And since then, each week we're doing more and more transactions because the community really supports it. And by doing that, I can network and tell people about opportunity to decentralize their monetary system. And so I think it's a perfect correlation. It's been a great partnership for me, but for my own family, it's helped us hopefully learn to store and hold our own wealth.
Have you seen other ranchers come around to the idea of opening up their mind to Bitcoin? I know we've done a number of these live events, one out at your ranch, and it seems like there's more and more traction coming from ranchers coming to Bitcoin as opposed to Bitcoin coming to ranchers, which is interesting.
Yes, we've seen quite a few more onboarded. Slim and I and a few others got to go speak at the U.S. Cattlemen's Association, and I was telling Slim, Jason Rich is also part of the Beef Initiative with Rich Ranches, and Jason's a first generation rancher. I grew up in this, so I already know going in, the demographic we're fixing to talk to at this conference, we are not going to be well received whatsoever. And so Marty was speaking at it, and we're all sitting around. I'm like, guys, y'all are very knowledgeable, much more than I am about Bitcoin, but I can tell you the audience is probably not going to accept what we have to say a whole lot. And what was interesting is we talked to, these guys that are in their 60s or 70s, and they're intrigued by the unknown mystery of Bitcoin. How in the hell do you take some internet money and give it to someone else and it generates $1? And we're trying to break it down real simple and explain. And we just had really interesting questions fired at us. After we were done is when it got the most interesting, because so many of them were scared to speak up in a group of 50 or 100 people and have intrigue. But instead, once we walked off the stage, they were coming into the lobby, and we had guys that were exporting beef or selling commodity to South America, and they needed a more effective way than sending a wire transfer. Bam, Bitcoin was the perfect fit. So we've seen more and more producers, as they start to understand that Bitcoin isn't just some internet money that tech guys completely understand and no one else does. Once they have learned the ease of using the technology, we've seen several on board with us, and it's getting bigger.
The topic of control has been talked about a little bit today, more from a monetary perspective of the Federal Reserve controlling money, but there's also a lot of control in the food system when it comes to processors and packers. And you mentioned that you recently opened up your meat processing facility. Can you just walk me through and talk to the audience about what were the incentives behind that? Was that an effort to get your control back and bring the processes back under your business?
Yeah, it was. I've been doing this now about 5 years. I've raised cattle my entire life, and forever I sold directly to the big corporate packers, and I've ranted on that a while ago. Actually, old Butch, who's going to be providing lunch today, he was one of the first ones that joined me with KNC. And as we started to grow and we saw the community want to support it, COVID hit. Well, when COVID hit, if you saw on the news, all the grocery stores were out of beef, which is hard to understand because when you look at how many head of cattle are available, that should not have been an issue. It was the big plants that were shutting down. All the small ones were at full capacity. And with my company, I was juggling between 6 different processors just to be able to get our beef and our pork harvested. So I started looking with my partner, Clyde Summerlotti. He owns a big Angus ranch in Luling called 2 C Angus. And he and I looked at several facilities, but in the short term, they were great fits. But I'm trying to be more of a larger, bigger picture, 10-year plan down the road. And none of them could really be built and expanded for growth. And so we went to the city of Luling. They're dying for commerce. It's an old oil field town. And we GC'd the entire project. After this, I'll never GC another commercial project. I can assure you. But we built about all in about 18,000 square foot facility. We can hold up to 300 head. You and I were talking earlier, I'm really impatient. So I kind of had that Field of Dreams idea that because I couldn't find spots during COVID, and even now with our growth, nobody could handle 10 or 15, 20, 25 head a week. We'd open this thing and the floodgates would open. But it was a little bit slower to start. But what I found is it's more so people are a little more nervous when you're going to take a beef to someone that just opened. You wonder if they know how to cut a cow. So in 4 months, we went from doing like 10 to 15 a week, which were mine, to adding customers. And now we're doing about 70 or 80. So we beat our projections almost by 12 months. And we built it so that I could guarantee any rancher within a 2-week period, I could harvest a beef at any time, or a pig. Lambs, goats, we do all 4. I didn't want small producers to experience what I went through, so we built it much larger than what we needed so we could grow into it. I didn't want to have the reverse reaction, which is probably either really stupid or really smart. I'm not real sure. We built it larger so we could absorb into that growth, and the only additions we're going to have to make is basically freezer space as we continue to grow. But it was an 18-month project that should have taken about 9. It took almost a year just to get our chute where you harvest the animal in. 12 months of delays. That was not a whole lot of fun, but it's been quite a learning experience.
What does that vertical integration mean for your customer ultimately? Are they getting more of the high quality product that they might want, more selective cuts, better prices? What does that actually mean for the customer?
It does actually a little bit of both. So I can control what the fabrication looks like. So, before, as our company grew, so does every critic that ever gets product. And so if folks, ordered a picanha, well, I have a standard cut at 2.5 pounds. When I'm using third-party processors, I couldn't control that. Whereas now I can, but now I got to control 35 employees to make sure that they actually follow the specs that we're supposed to. But furthermore, it ensures, it allows me to have pricing advantage. It allows me to hopefully pass that back along to the consumer. So as our costs increase, we do have to pass that on, but at a different level than most other producers, because they're still having to pay a third party, whereas I'm not. And so, it was more of a vision for a continued growth pattern to where we could provide the highest quality, most affordable beef of anyone that I compete with.
One of the things that I think has been amazing watching the last 12 months of what's happening with the Beef Initiative and at Kansas Cattle is that there seems to be this drive towards these in-person events and getting to know your customer a little bit more, and this rise of food intelligence where people are actually understanding what's happening, not just when the food hits their plate, but also what's happening when the animal is being raised. So can you talk about these in-person events and what that connection with your customer really means to you? Because I don't think I had no prior experience of these in-person events, and the feedback, there was almost some magic to it where like you and Jason and Rick were hosting these events on their farms, and people were traveling from all across the country to be there and learn from you about what your processes look like. So maybe just unpack that connection and what those in-person events have meant to you.
Yeah, so all right, let's look out in the room. How many of y'all actually grew up in rural America? All right, so of the ones in rural America, how many of you still live there? Very few. So as you continue to look at generations that are passed down, so many of our customers, our consumers, hell, the whole country has been separated from agriculture and from rural America as it is. I can't tell you how many times this drove me insane. My wife and I would go to the grocery store, and you would hear a kid say, "Mommy, where do we get the egg? Where do the eggs come from?" And kids believe it's truly the grocery store. It's not from a chicken. Or where does your steak come from? It's not from the guy behind the glass cutting it. There was someone that actually raised it. And so these events, I did not realize how impactful they would be. Texas Slim and I and Jason and several others, we've had these conferences where people could come and learn about. And then Johnny and I had this crazy idea. We wanted to make an event, although it may not be politically correct. We called it Kill It and Grill It. And so we had our first one in concert with the Beef Initiative at our harvest plant in Luling. So people actually got to come tour a facility to see the true process of what it looks like. They got to go to our ranch after, and then we did more of a Brazilian style, try every single cut of the cow. And it just really hit it off. And with the beef initiative, we plan to continue going across the country this year and doing more and more of these. But specifically in our local market, Butch and I are going to keep taking our product, going out and cooking for folks, and allow it to be more of an open dialogue so you can talk to us about food, where it comes from, what this cut is, how do you cook it, and educate our consumers. And it's, between the Meat Mafia and I look at a few other influencers, y'all have done more in the last 3 years than the Beef Checkoff has done for us in 10. And for those who don't know what the Beef Checkoff is, do you remember those ads at Beef, it's what's for dinner, or you saw the check mark on the bumper sticker? We pay, as producers, we have to pay in for every animal we sell, we pay them $2. And we've been funneling millions of dollars, and they're supposed to go do our education. They're supposed to go market it for us. Well, tell me this, if we're trying to attract those of you that came from rural America and now live in cities, why do we need to target our money towards every stock show and rodeo? Yes, we do get urban folks that do attend them, but it's probably not the best use of our dollar. Going into the urban areas, having these casual type events where we can tell our story, but people can start to understand the why behind the food that they eat, or the where did it come from, how was it fed, how was it handled. It's made a greater impact. So for me, thank you for what y'all been doing as the Meat Mafia. And that was exactly what we're trying to do with the Beef Initiative too, is just explain and help educate more and more people.
And one of the things that I think that the Beef Initiative has done an amazing job of is taking the ethos of Bitcoin and really applying it to what's happening in the food production system. Slim's video mentioned proof of work and decentralization. Do you see those as things that you guys are going to continue to grow into as the Beef Initiative continues to grow?
Absolutely. One of the hot buttons we're facing right now is Fed looking to push mRNA into cattle vaccines. And for people that are very privy of that information, all of our producers, we will not, and I'll say it over and over, we will not vaccinate with mRNA vaccines. But we see more and more of that coming down to where they're trying to, if we can't get however many millions of people to not take the shot, we're going to get into the food system in some form or fashion. But we've also seen like H-E-B, Kroger, they came and met with the Angus Association and several of the big packers, and they're fixing to start, they've already done it in several regions, they're starting to cancel out their self-butchery. So what'll happen when you go to the grocery store moving forward, you're going to get a standard cut that's already prepackaged, pre-weighed, and this is what your offering is. And so kind of that niche availability where, hey, I want to try another cut of meat, or hey, I want a 2-inch ribeye, you're going to either have to go to a local market or you're going to have to go directly to your producer. So honestly, I think we have a greater momentum moving forward with that decentralization and stepping away, and consumers aren't scared of it. In fact, I think a lot of us feel safer buying directly from someone because we learned during COVID how well we can trust Walmart and our grocery stores to provide all the necessities in which we need. And so that it really helped push that movement forward.
Yeah, one of the things I don't think I fully appreciated before we started the podcast was the regulatory burden that farmers and ranchers have to deal with on a regular basis. Through conversations with yourself and Jason, Joel Salatin, and Will Harris, it seems like it's the one thing that you guys are most worried about. And so do you view Bitcoin as this vote for you to be able to say no when there is some sort of regulatory things that come across, like the mRNA vaccination, that you're able to actually say no without dealing with ramifications that might negatively affect your business?
Well, I've always been, trying to think of my exact answer to that. I told Slim not too long ago with the Beef Initiative, I said, what will happen is if you go out, they were building a plant in Missouri, a big, large processing plant. They had it all over Fox News. They're going to help all the local ranchers. They're going to promote their product. And then come to find out, we realized they signed a deal on the back end with Walmart. And so Walmart's going to buy all the product, and it really wasn't the glorious turnout that it was supposed to be. My point with that is, I would rather not jump on Fox News and CNN. I like to be more of an underlier. I like to continue just to quietly stay right below visibility and offer and continue to do what we do. Yeah, Bitcoin does give us a lot more freedom in fighting back against that. There are some things that we can't necessarily, we have to do what we are required to do with EPA. I sit with the USDA inspector 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in our facility, monitoring every single move in which we make. A lot of that too, though, it's a job for them. If you can really direct them towards what is most important with food safety, they tend to not be as difficult. I'm not saying there aren't outliers, but where it's getting harder with ranching is, between EPA, USDA, they keep changing labeling requirements. For us, for all that are doing regenerative, we don't really care about the pesticide thing because we're not applying pesticide. We're using our own cattle manure to go back and fertilize with. We're letting the animals actually put the minerals and vitamins back into the ground for us versus having to direct applicate it. So by building our own decentralized currency through Bitcoin and our own network of contacts through Bitcoin, I think it allows us to finally be able to push back and have something to stand on.
So I think the ag bill is up this year, correct?
That is correct.
Is there anything in that bill that you think the everyday consumer should know and be thinking about?
Truth in labeling. How many of y'all ever gone to the meat market or gone to the grocery store and bought all natural, grass-fed beef from the USA? As producers, we have a big issue with that, because what the rule really states is that when you go on that label, it says in the USA, all it means is it had to be repackaged through a processing plant in the USA. So you could be buying Brazilian, Australian, in South American beef, and a large part of that is we want consumers to be able to have true visibility, and unfortunately, I don't think their bill is going to reflect what they're saying it's going to. That's one of the biggest things for me.
Got you. It looks like our time is up, but Cole, thank you so much. This has been incredibly informative.
Thank you.